Thank you for inviting me to be here to give the presentation today. What I'll be talking about is climate change and how it affects coral reefs. But I also want to talk about something a little different, which is what we can do about that, how we can help coral reefs through the climate change crisis during this century. We all know that carbon dioxide is increasing in the atmosphere, and that's causing two problems. One is the ocean is warming, which causes corals to bleach and sometimes to die. At any rate, it's causing coral reef ecosystems to degrade. And then the second issue with climate change is the fact that atmospheric CO2 concentrations are rising in the atmosphere. That causes more of that carbon dioxide to be absorbed by the ocean. And when that happens, the ocean pH goes down. It decreases. And that causes corals problems because it's more difficult for them to create their coral skeletons. It's more difficult to maintain coral reefs. And the lower pH overall leads to a degradation of the reef structure itself. And so these are two pretty profound effects on a very important ecosystem that supports really high biodiversity, lots of fisheries, and in general provides a lot of food and food resources and a lot of personal wealth for people that depend on them and that live in coastal zones near coral reefs. So we know these problems are pretty bad. We know they're going to get worse as carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere. And so for many years, the cry has been basically just to stop putting carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. If we can do that, then we can slow down or even reverse the effects on coral reefs. Unfortunately, that's really hard to do. And even though a lot of progress has been made and there is a growing consensus that we need to do something about fossil fuel emissions, we still have to admit the fact that the conditions are going to get worse for a while, and they're going to get worse for coral reefs. And so we need to think about a strategy for helping them through this crisis. And so what I'm going to talk about today is some of those strategies. Right now, we've already have things in place like the Species Protection Act and other laws which protect endangered species. But we also have marine protected areas which protect the entire ecosystem. And now we're moving into, as climate change worsens, we'll have to try things that we haven't tried before. That includes things like growing corals and replanting them on the reefs in the same way that we do with forests and reforestation. The second thing might be to do selective breeding, so to breed corals so that they can be more resilient to temperature increases and acidification. And then we also could do genetic engineering, or we could start moving corals around from one place to the other. And as we move and take up these more drastic steps, they require a lot more effort, they require a lot more money, and they mean there's a lot more risks. Most people do not like the idea of genetic engineering, but if we need to save an ecosystem, people are starting to consider that. The last thing we would consider would be something like freezing corals in the future, or trying to maintain ecosystems in large aquaria. That's called ex situ conservation. That is pretty drastic, but it is also something we should plan for and be ready for should we not meet our targets of 1.5 to 2 degrees centigrade above normal. And so hopefully I will give people some tools to think about today in the talk, and hopefully some optimism that, yeah, there's a lot we can do right now to help coral reefs through the crisis.